gehen wir hin. Wir haben gerade gesagt,
schwer,
wir haben doch die Rollen für die Hochzeitsgeschichte.
Ah ja. Achso, das sind die Sachen drin.
Nein, die sind leer, aber in der unteren Hälfte sind zwei Sachen.
Ja.
And all the women performing the music are Jewish as well.
Really?
So, yes.
Oh, that's a lovely idea.
Yes,
Thank you,
and they do that.
That's a beautiful idea.
Yes, they
So when will they play?
during the opening.
Right.
So we always have a speech or a lecture, and in between they will do 2 or 3 songs.
Very
We have
nice.
a sing-
Ja, sehr geehrte Frau Schreiber, sehr geehrter Herr Schreiber, sehr geehrte Frau Dr. Deusel, Frau Dr. Denz, liebe Frau Else, sehr geehrter Herr Schön, lieber Rainer C. mit Ehefrau Silvia, liebe Annette und Robert, sehr geehrte Anwesende. Als zweite Bürgermeisterin des Marktes Hirscheid darf ich Sie sehr herzlich hier im Schloss Sassanpfad willkommen heißen. Briefe, von Hand geschrieben, gelten bis heute als die persönlichsten Andenken, die man von dem Verfasser. Als kleine Erinnerung möchte ich Ihnen kurz was überreichen. Ihnen für Sie und Ihren Mann. Halt, jetzt brauchen wir wieder die Maske. Nur eine Kleinigkeit als Erinnerung. Und wir würden uns sehr freuen, Sie bald wieder in Hirscheid begrüßen zu dürfen. Vielen Dank.
Ich mache mit den Danksagungen gleich weiter, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren. Es ist mir eine sehr große Freude, heute hier die Ausstellung Erinnerungsteile, Erinnerung teilen, Bilder einer jüdischen Familiengeschichte mit zu eröffnen. Doch bevor ich gemeinsam mit Ihnen in die Inhalte der Ausstellung eintauchen möchte, möchte ich mich bedanken. Zuvorderst danke ich meinen beiden Kolleginnen im Kuratorenteam. Dear Ruth, I really appreciated to put this exhibition with you. It is a great pleasure to work with you and to meet you personally here in Sassanpfad for the first time, not via Zoom. The immense profundity of your art fascinated me from the very beginning, and it is a great honor for me that your work of arts are presented here in the old Heimat of your family for the first time. Des Weiteren möchte ich Ihnen, Frau Schäfer, die ich jetzt duze, Annette Schäfer, danken. Unsere Zusammenarbeit habe ich als sehr effizient und angenehm empfunden. Unsere ersten Mails und Telefonate fanden Mitte Juli 2020 statt und die sich anschließenden Phasen der Projektumsetzung griffen wirklich idealtypisch ineinander. Vielen Dank. Last but not least gilt mein aufrichtiger Dank Ihnen, Herr C. Sie sind ja der Initiator des Gesamtprojektes der Ausstellung Ruth mit den Kunstwerken von Ruth Schreiber. Eindeutig muss das so festgestellt werden. Es war Ihr erklärtes Ziel, am Ball zu bleiben, bis die Kunstwerke von Ruth Schreiber hier in der Bamberger Gegend zum ersten Mal ausgestellt werden. Es ist nun gelungen und es schließt sich ein Kreis. Im August 2019 mailten Sie mir, oder nicht mir, sondern an die Professur für Judaistik zum ersten Mal, wo ich eben als wissenschaftliche Mitarbeiterin tätig bin. Ich nahm mich dann der Sache an. Ihre sehr angenehme Hartnäckigkeit begleitete das Projekt bis zur Antragstellung beim Kölner Verein 1700 Jahre jüdisches Leben in Deutschland, der das Festjahr, wie schon erwähnt, von meiner Vorrednerin mit initiiert hat. Dieser Verein ist mit der Sparkassenstiftung Bamberg der finanzielle Förderer der Ausstellung. Beiden Institutionen sei an dieser Stelle natürlich herzlich gedankt. Doch zu Ihnen zurück, Herr C. Ohne Ihr jahrelanges Engagement wären wir um einen Baustein der Erinnerungskultur an diese einstige, vielfältige jüdische Geschichte hier in der Region ärmer und der Wissensstand über die Familie Merell wäre wesentlich geringer. Vielen Dank für Ihre Arbeit und Ihre Bereitschaft, vor allem auch Ihr Wissen mit anderen zu teilen. Das ist nicht selbstverständlich. Einen letzten Dank möchte ich noch aussprechen. Einmal dir, liebes Madar Becker, und dir, lieber Joachim Schön. Wie auch von meiner Vorrednerin schon erwähnt, ist die Ausstellung ja Teil des Festprogrammes 1700 Jahre jüdisches Leben in Deutschland, das unter dem Dach der VHS Bamberg-Land von uns dreien kuratiert wurde. Ich bin wirklich sehr dankbar, mit euch mehr als 18 Monate so eng und vertrauensvoll zusammenarbeiten zu dürfen und hoffe, dass wir daran anknüpfen werden. Nun geht es aber um die Inhalte. Die Zukunft hat eine lange Vergangenheit, lautet ein talmudisches Sprichwort, das nicht häufig, aber immerhin zuweilen im Kontext der Erinnerungskultur in Deutschland aufgegriffen wird. In Bezug auf die Shoah, also die industrielle Massenermordung der europäischen Judenheit, kursieren Begriffe wie Erinnerungskultur, Erinnerungsarbeit, Gedächtniskultur und Geschichtspolitik. In welcher Beziehung stehen Erinnerungspolitik und Erinnerungskultur mit der jüdischen Maxime Zachor, also zu Deutsch Erinnere dich? Wie ist es um das kollektive Gedächtnis bzw. um das Familiengedächtnis bestellt? Wer nimmt wann welche Perspektive ein und warum eigentlich? Und es geht nicht lediglich um die Vergangenheit und die Gegenwart der Erinnerung, denn eine immens wichtige, vielleicht sogar die wichtigste Frage aus meiner Sicht ist, wie ist es um die Zukunft der Erinnerung bestellt? All diese Fragen beschäftigen mich als Judaistin und als jüdische Historikerin ebenso wie als Bürgerin dieses Landes, in dem ich lebe. Sie sind der Hintergrund, als ich das Konzept der Ausstellung erdachte und in der Folge die Ausstellungstexte verfasste. Doch es geht nicht nur um ein Nachdenken in der Theorie, sondern auch um die gelebte Praxis. Und ich blicke auf die Liste der Rednerinnen und Redner und auch auf einige der Gäste. Es ist eine sehr schöne Runde. Wir haben mit Ihnen eine politische Repräsentantin, die die Erinnerungspolitik vertritt. Wir haben lokale Akteurinnen und Akteure wie Annette Schäfer und Rainer C., die organisieren, forschen, Netzwerke knüpfen und Kontakte pflegen. Sie betreiben aktive Erinnerungsarbeit vor Ort. Und selbstverständlich ist ja auch hier Ruth Schreiber zu nennen, die als Künstlerin und auch als Mensch ihre Familiengeschichte erforscht, offenlegt, mit uns teilt und in den Fokus rückt. Was ist denn nun das Konzept der Ausstellung? Worum geht es? Es geht um Perspektiven, um Blickewechsel. Was interessiert nicht-jüdische Deutsche, lokale Akteurinnen und Akteure eigentlich an jüdischer Geschichte? Welche Perspektive nimmt Ruth Schreiber als Nachfahrin ein? Warum besuche ich eigentlich diese Ausstellung? Die Frage kann ich nicht mir stellen, weil ich sie geschrieben habe, aber ich kann mir die Frage stellen, warum ich mich für das Thema interessiere. Es geht um Sassanfahrt, aber auch um viel mehr. Die Geschichte der Familie Merell, die hier in Sassanfahrt bis zum erzwungenen Ende im Jahr 1939 lebte, steht im Mittelpunkt der Ausstellung. Sie dient als Fallbeispiel in ihrer Vergleichbarkeit und in ihrer Besonderheit. Die besten Kennerinnen und Kenner der Familie Merell sitzen hier im Raum, Ruth Schreiber und Rainer C. Die Ausstellung besteht aus 3 Elementen. Sie zu sehen ist natürlich als Herzstück eine ausgewählte Kunst von Ruth Schreiber. Dann gibt es eine Videostation mit filmischen Dokumentationen zur Familie Merell. Und drittens gibt es Ausstellungstafeln, die Annette Schäfer gestaltet hat. In diesen Ausstellungsteil will ich nun inhaltlich einführen. In den Blick geraten Geschichte, Gegenwart und die Zukunft. Die Ausstellungstexte sind von mir formuliert. Sie werden illustriert durch Familienfotos und Fotos von Kunstwerken von Ruth Schreiber. Weiterhin ist eine zusätzliche Ebene eingebaut, in dem Passagen von Quellenzitaten und Erinnerungstexten eingebaut
I pick it up and she said,
So I just want to say that it's been really challenging to get to this point and to be standing here in front of you emotionally for me, even just coming to Germany as a tourist, as a visitor, as an artist. And I want to say that without Rainer, this whole thing would not have happened. He has been very interested and very supportive from the start. And Annetta and her husband Robert joined in pretty early on. They were already showing us around in 2017 when they had organized the Stolpersteine for my grandparents. And their sensitivity and their kindness had made all of this possible for us. So I just wanted to say thank you to them and also to Rebecca for her texts and her interest and her students' work, and to thank you all for your interest and for opening up a different vista for those of us who are second generation from the Shoah. This is very enlightening for us, and I'm grateful that you've been able to offer me this particular sort of satisfaction. Thank you very much.
So, bevor wir nun zur Tat schreiten und gemeinsam durch die Ausstellung gehen, liegt es an mir, zum Schluss ein paar Worte des Dankes noch zu verlieren, weil sowas natürlich nie ganz alleine steht. Sie haben jetzt gerade schon gehört, wie viele Menschen an der gesamten Konzeption und an der Umsetzung beteiligt waren. Bedingungen, Krankheitsfälle und anderes es tatsächlich geschafft haben, heute hier zu sein. Ich danke euch ganz, ganz herzlich.
And of course, most of all, I
Thank you, Ruth, and you, David, that you both came to us. You, Ruth, for your heart and for your courage to deal with this family, with your family history. You said it was a very emotional experience and an emotional progress, and I think that's really, really important, because that's the way we have to deal with our story that we share, that we have in common. And the last 3 or 4 days were very, very impressive, very exciting, and I really hope we made a good start and a good end for this project. Just have to say thank you, Ruth. Thank you.
Welcome to our exhibition with Ruth's artwork, and we're very pleased to have you all here with us to join us a short guided tour through the exhibition. And we're also very pleased that so many of you are watching. We didn't expect that, and that's really, really an honor for us. to have you all here. So David is smiling at me, and so I can see your reflections. So Ruth, let's start. So the opening is the sculpture of grandfather Shmuel Samuel Merel, who was Ruth's grandfather, who lived here in Sasanfard with his family in the 1930s. And he just gets us into the exhibition. He invites us, and he is the symbol for the praying Jewish man in his normal, regular life. So this is really an impressive sculpture at the beginning because you're in the middle of the scene, of the story. So Ruth, whatever you want
lovely.
to...
No, you're doing great.
No. Yes, this is the text explaining the way we did the concept of the exhibition. And the thanks to all the people who work for us and the people who gave us money and who are the partners. Yes, in the first room we have as we all think, the most impressive artwork from Ruth, the masks with the texts from the letters of her grandparents on it. Normally there are 200 of these masks, but on this wall there are only fitted 72. But at least it gives a really impression of this artwork. And in my opinion, that's an interesting difference between the texts on the masks, the letters between this couple, and the thick black paper that seems to make the communication impossible. So it's communication and not communication at once. Above, Ruth did many years ago, and it's called Yitzkov. Yitzkov, sorry.
We shall remember.
It's the remembrance prayer, I think. Yes.
That's right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So, and you can see the figure, which is really inside itself, and it's really praying and occupied with the self thoughts.
Right. And then below that, you've got Tribute to My Grandparents.
Yes, the below sculptures is called Tribute to My Grandparents. You can see the grandfather and the grandmother. This is the first text for the exhibition about the Merel family, and it's about the contact Rainer C. did with the family after a long time, and with a way of remembering in Germany. And the research of Rainer started maybe at a little bit later, when Ruth began to work with her art and to connect the family history with her artwork. Yes. So
Here we have a Shulchan Shabbat.
Shulchan Shabbat, yeah.
Like a dream version or a ghostly version of the Shulchan Shabbat.
Mm-hmm.
The candles, the wine cups, and the plate for the challah, for the bread.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same place, we've got the thumbs down sculpture for the sign that my grandfather met on the railway platform in Auschwitz for those who were not going to be allowed to live, who were going to go straight to the gas chambers.
Yes. Okay.
We have another board over here.
Yes, the wall on this side with the text is about the Merel family staying in Sasanfard. You can see the family members, Samuel and Nathan, and the other children outside the house in Sasanfard, living as a normal family in this small Franconian village. And they joined the Jewish community in neighborhood Hirscheid. And David just opens the window to show you the way down to Hirscheid, where the synagogue was, and the mikvah, and the Jewish school. And on one picture on this board, sorry, you can see the only photograph we have of the synagogue. It's about the 1920s time. On the right side, you can see it. Today on this place is a monument to remember the Jewish community of Ischheid.
Then here is a sculpture which I called Esther Suitcase Pack It Up. Just some porcelain clothes in a case, not so different from what the children took with them on the Kindertransport. And that leads us to the Kindertransport girls.
So I really like these two girl sculptures because they have in common what's all the significance of this exhibition. The two remaining girls and the letters, and there you can see how small Jenny and Sophie were when she had to stay all alone without their mother in France.
That's right.
Yeah. So the next,
We will move into the next
room, yes.
Next room, the second
And on this board, you can see the first part of the family history in time of Nazi time. And this board tells the story how the three eldest children were sent to England. You can see in this row all family members with pictures, on photographs. And that's, I think, is really important for the visitors because they see real people, real persons living here in Sasanfat, and they all had to leave.
And here in the middle, we have my Shulchan Aruch, my lay table. The tablecloth is made again from letters, texts in German and in English translation. And we've got on it some old plates. Some of them actually came originally from Germany, the three with the green and pink borders. The others are other old china plates on which I printed some family photographs. And in the middle is a ceramic book, again with pictures and letters taken out of the letters from the text of the book, of the letters from my grandparents.
So maybe we can have a look at the back side of one of these plates. So you can see the writing Hutschenreuter Selb. And Hutschenreuter is a very famous company for porcelain and so on. And it's located in Upper Franconia, such as we are now at the moment. So this is a really connection to this region.
And here are 4 drawings, again, based on the photographs and the letters. I copied 4 photographs and drew them onto photocopies of 4 of the letters. So and then we start with the 8 screen prints. Well, one is missing actually. One never made it.
Yes, we're looking for it.
Somewhere between Jerusalem and Germany. This is the first one. It's the Kindertransport, which saved my father, Nathan, Sabi, and his sister Esther. And there's a text here.
On the next board is the second part of the family story in the Nazi time. And there we have the passports of Sophie and Jenny, which were written in Bamberg. And you can see they were really living here at this country where we are now. And about the meeting of the children again after the war, 1946 in London. And the last postcards from Samuel to his children.
This screen print is of Brussels, where my grandparents escaped with the 2 girls when the Germans, when they escaped Germany in the summer of 1939. And they had about 10 good months in Brussels before the Nazis invaded Belgium. And that's what I'm showing here. Background of Brussels with potatoes and onions that they used to buy in the market, and some of the letters that they wrote at that time.
So on this board, the text is about sharing the memory between the German and the Jewish people, and how we all together had this meeting in 2017, sorry. So 4 years ago, when we all met in Sasanfahrt to lay the Stolpersteine, and maybe some of you is recognizing him or herself on this group photograph. And it's also about keeping up the memory for all people with this project of Stolpersteine, and with research in archives or whatever. There's a lot of researching at the moment in Germany.
This is the silk screen print about the postman, because my grandparents wrote a lot how they wanted to get post from the children. And then there's one with the parcel. They asked their children in England to send them some clothes and some towels, because they had packed away their warm clothes and sent them to England, and the winter came and they didn't have very much at all. And then we've got the picture of Riefsalz, where Safta Mina perished. She wasn't very well and she didn't get good treatment, as you can imagine. And then from then on, Sophie and Jenny were on their own, and they were rescued actually in secret by the OZE, the French underground organization, which smuggled them out of Riefsalz and looked after them for another couple of years before sending them to Switzerland. Then we have this of Auschwitz, and I found my grandfather's name in the Auschwitz diaries on the list. Here you see Meryl Samuel, and I put it there in the middle, and this is a print made of the last 3 postcards that Samuel wrote. And if you notice, we've got the 2 of them are both written on the 20th of August 1942. He wrote the same thing twice because not all the posts got through, and he wanted to be sure that his children would hear from him. And here we have his last postcard from the 24th of August 1942.
Isn't that the one that Rebecca quoted from?
Yes, that's the one Rebecca quoted from. And I believe that he was murdered, gas on arrival in Auschwitz on the 28th of August 1942, that he was in the list there. And then the last screen print is of Jenny and Sophie, who crossed with another group of about 20 children from France into Switzerland across a barbed wire fence. And they were looked after in Switzerland for about 2 years until the end of the war. And some months later, they were reunited with their other siblings in London. Annette, just tell us something about what's happening here in Franconia with the Jewish history and Jewish culture.
So the last about, I think, 10, 15 years, the research is going on really a lot. Let alone in Bamberg County, we have 8 Jewish cemeteries. We've been there 2 days ago, yes. And all these cemeteries are inventarisiert. There's research about all the gravestones and the names and the population, the Jewish population of the villages. We have lots of events this year because of this Jubilee 1,700 years of Jewish life in Germany. So we really hope that we can go to a better future together now, with all this research and with all these events, and yeah.
Thank you so much for everything that you're doing with such a big heart and such sensitivity. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Ruth and David, we're so glad to have you here, that we've come to a good end with this exhibition, that it really worked, because it was not so clear the last few years if we can do this. But with the work of Rainer and Rebecca, we just got this really, really good solution. So, and just to show you the last board, it's quite important for memory. So there you can see again Miriam sitting on the desk. This last board is about communication with the visitors. So you can see the paper cuts where the people can write their own, in their own words, how they feel about the exhibition, how they feel about the story, and how they want to keep memory alive. So this is the guest book.
Will there be any program with the children around here, do you think? Will the schools come?
Yes, I've talked to several teachers. It's not so easy at the moment because of pandemic to move whole school classes, but I have contact to history teachers. And so we will have a few visits of pupils. We will have again guided tours for adults, and we will have a little bit of a program around it, yes.
And I suppose the Jewish Studies Department in Bamberg University will come, since Rebecca and Yael teach there, don't they?
Yes, they do. And the contact is close, so we're open every time for any visitors.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Annetta, thank you very much for being willing to be interviewed and to give us some of your background. Maybe you just introduce yourself, Annetta, and explain what it is that you do, and then we'll talk about the exhibition.
Yeah. So my name is Annette Schäfer, and I work for the community of Lischeid, and I'm responsible for cultural things. So I run 2 museums, make exhibitions, and I organize this castle of Sassanfahrt, which is a center for culture and education, and I organize events like concerts, like lectures, whatever is needed.
Right. Sassenfahrt is part of the Hirscheid area? Okay, obviously we have a strong interest, particularly in Sassenfahrt.
Yes.
And what is this Schloss Sassenfahrt? What was the background of that?
This castle, this Schloss, has a very complicated history because it was owned by many people, and it was destroyed and burned down a few times, and the way it is today, it's 19th century. And the most important thing of the Sassenfahrt history is in 18th century, it was the home of Reichsgraf Julius von Soden, and he allowed people to settle down in his area in Sassenfahrt. Before he came, Sassenfahrt had this castle and a few farms, and he allowed people to settle down, to found a family. And so many people, about more than 1,000 people, came to Sassenfahrt, and he built up tiny houses for them. But he, one of these houses is a museum now, and but he didn't care about what they should work or how they should get money. So in 19th century, the history of Sassenfahrt is a history of poverty. And it's really special in this area because all the other villages were, there lived wealthy farmers and wealthy people, and here in Sassenfahrt there were poor people with large families in really small houses. It was a really cruel history, and this Reichsgraf Julius von Soden moved away, and then the people were let alone by him and tried to manage to get out of this poverty, and they managed it only in 20th century. So today Sassenfahrt is no village of farmhouses like you know from other Franconian villages, but you can still, if you have the eye for it, the poverty in this village, but the people are now settled, they are working, it's a normal village, but it has this special history.
Thanks, that is interesting.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the exhibition now that you're mounting in Schloss Sassenfahrt. Can you explain why this exhibition is being held and why here and why now?
It's all have to be grateful to Rainer C., who started this whole story, because he made the connection to the Merel family,
Yes.
because he was interested in the history of the last Jewish family here in Sassanfahrt. In 18th century there were a few Jewish families, but we don't know what happened to them, they moved away. And this last family, he was interested as a non-professional historian.
Yes.
And we had 4 years ago the meeting with the family, and it was a very moving day, and Rainer always said it would be great to have an exhibition with the artwork of Ruth. And he was, I always call it a freundliche Hartnäckigkeit, friendly but strong interest.
Yes.
You understand what I
do.
mean? Yes.
I do.
And 1.5 years ago, he told me he had a connection to University of Bamberg and the Jewish studies there, with a member of the team there. And he said, maybe you want to talk to this member of the team and maybe you can get something. And Rebecca, she was this woman from the Center of Jewish Studies in Bamberg. We talked about, we only know each other by Zoom meetings.
Oh, really?
We will meet first time on Sunday.
Right, at the opening.
Yeah. And she had a few interesting ideas about getting financing for this exhibition, because transporting artwork from Israel to Germany and back is a very expensive thing, and all the organizing around. And she had a few ideas about financing, and we were successful. We got this Antrag,
A grant?
where you get money from, where you have to
A grant.
write. Yeah,
A
okay.
grant.
So, and now we could start the preparations, and yeah, it's always interesting to have such an experience coming closer to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And who do you expect to visit the exhibition?
At first, the local people, because when you remember when we met in 2017, there were a lot of people at this event,
Yes.
laying the stones, and people in Sassanfahrt are interested in their own history. There's a little bit of a rivalry between Hirschheid and Sassanfahrt, because Sassanfahrt always were the poor people, Hirschheid people were the rich ones, and now they are together in one community. That's not always easy.
Right.
And so the Sassanfahrt people are really interested. But I also expect people coming from around, we did a lot of advertising, who are interested in Jewish history, in Shoah history, and now we have the celebration year of 1,700 years of Jewish culture and life in Germany, and so we can be part of a larger movement, a part of a larger information campaign.
Right. And how do you expect them to react when they see what Ruth has put on show?
I think the reactions will be more than one reaction.
Yes.
It's the reaction to the family history and the reaction to the artwork, which works with the family history. We just talked about the black masks,
Yes.
which is a really impressive thing to see hanging on the wall, but all these masks are printed with texts from letters from her grandparents, which they wrote to each other from the concentration camps. And this black paper and having a closed face is a second layer of meaning.
Yes.
Talking but not talking at one time. Do you understand what I mean?
I do, and I think you're expressing it very beautifully and clearly.
Yeah. So that's really impressive. And the girl dresses, the 2 girl dresses, that's the picture I chose for advertising because it's the special story of Sophie and Jenny. And every time I tell this story, people are reacting. They can't understand how it was possible for 2 small girls to survive in the middle of the war without their mother in France and to get back to their family. That's the most impressive thing of the story.
And Annetta, I wanted to ask you a more personal view about this. Can you share your own feelings as an individual and maybe explain your own personal background to the war and how that brings you to your feelings about this exhibition?
So I'm a normal German who grew up in the 70s and 80s when in school history, Second World War was part of history. You learn it like you learn about 30 Years' War or Roman Empire or whatever. But I'm a historian, and for me it's important the life of the people in history, not learning about dates or whatever battles, but knowing about how history works and has its influence on the people's life, because we are staying in history every day. At the moment we feel it very intensive. And there's the second layer in my family because both of my grandfathers on both sides were soldiers in war, and the father of my father even was a soldier in First World War, and he died in 1952 about illness he got from Second World War. I don't know much about him because he died so long before I was born, but my other grandfather, he was a member of the Waffen-SS. And I didn't know it because in German families you didn't talk much about wartime. And he gave me a picture of him when he was still alive. He wanted to have me a picture of him, and it was a picture of him in uniform in 1942 in Russia. We didn't have a very close relationship, but I always asked me, why did he give me this picture of him? What were his feelings about that? I don't know exactly. And I talked to my mother, his daughter, and he and his wife weren't really caring parents. They were quite distant people, and they had one daughter born in January 45. And I always asked me, why did they have a child? There were no people to have a child. And my opinion is, as a member of the Waffen-SS, he was told it's better you have children, it fits better into ideology. So they had a daughter. And it wasn't a caring or loving family. They had enough money to live in a big house and so on, but there wasn't much love in this family. And so I come from a very distant family. And he gave me, my grandfather, this picture. He died in 2003. I didn't have the chance to ask him, but I would like to know why he did this. And so I think it's a little bit of a personal responsibility to work on this project at the moment. And so it was one of the most emotional moments in my life. Was 4 years ago when we were walking through Bamberg, and Jenny asked me, why do you do this for us, all this organization and so on? And I said, it's our duty as Germans, but I told her of my grandfather, and I think it's my duty as well, and I want to have another relationship. And then this kind, lovely old woman hugged me in between in the middle of Bamberg, and it was a very emotional moment. And so I'm very, very happy that we can have a round image of this whole story we have together with the Merel family and with Sassanfahrt and with my personal situation. I think it's a kind of not closing, it's the wrong word. Abschluss, you know, it's a completeness now.
Completion.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much to you, Rainer and Robert, for being willing to give us some of your views and explanations. And Robert, would you mind asking Rainer to begin with to explain how he started this whole long journey, which has brought us here to this exhibition?
I understood this.
Okay, good.
Ja, ich bin Heimatforscher, seit vielen Jahren halt interessiert an der Geschichte meines Heimatorts.
So Rainer is very interested in the local history. He's also a local historian, and he is very interested in the history of the village of Sassanfahrt. And about 10 years ago, he found out that there also was a Jewish family in Sassanfahrt in the early 20th century. He even didn't know that there was also a Jewish family in Sassanfahrt. Nobody was talking about that after the Second World War. So it was rather surprising for him that there was also this family Merel. And so he started to search for documents about the Merel family, but there was another local historian, Mr. Fleischmann, who also started about his research about the Merel family, and he was the one who made the first contact with the family a couple of years ago.
Right. So, Rainer, perhaps you could explain how you found out about the one Merel family at all.
So it was Mr. Fleischmann who started his research about the Merel family, but he wanted to write a book about it, but he couldn't finish it because he died a couple of years ago. And his family didn't want to leave the documents he had found out. So Rainer had to start again from the beginning. And so he had the idea in his mind to make the book, which couldn't be finished by Mr. Fleischmann. And so he started again all the research, and he knew that there were some members of the family still living in London, in Great Britain. And so this was his first contact. Mr. Fleischmann wrote a couple of books about the Jewish communities here in northern Bavaria and Franconia. And so he met a Jewish lady from London who visited him several years ago. And when she went back to London, there she was active in a kind of Jewish circle. And she told about the researches of Mr. Fleischmann, his books and all his projects. And one of the members of this circle was Jenny Merel. And she stood up and said, "Hey, my parents came from the same region, and so I have my roots there too." And that was for Mr. Fleischmann the point to say, hey, there's another family and another chapter in this Jewish history.
And Rainer, did you ever meet Mr. Fleischmann?
So once he held a lecture here about the family Merel. It must have been about 2002 or 2003, I think. It was before the opening of this house here, and not 2012 or 13, not 2003, about 7, 8 or 9 years ago. And he held a lecture about the family Merel. And this was the first, but I think the only contact with him. And then 2 or 3 years later he died, unfortunately.
No.
He tried to get in contact with Mr. Fleischmann, but at that time he was already dead. So Rainer started his own researches on the family Merell after the death of Mr. Fleischmann. And at first he went to several archives in Bamberg, where he found some documents about the family. And he also tried to get in contact with Jenny Merell, because he knew that she was still living in London, and so he was looking in internet whether he could get in contact with her. And so he took over the work of Mr. Fleischmann at the end. So he found out that there was a Jewish society in London, and he tried to get in contact with this society, and he got in contact with a very nice lady who said, yes, I know Jenny Merell personally, and I just will meet her today, and I will tell her about your project. And at the same time, at the same day, she called Rainer only a few hours later to tell him she wanted to visit Sassanfahrt with her children, and wants to meet all the nice people she knew from former times, which was rather surprising for Rainer.
Yes, sure.
Ja, also das war überraschend und war sehr schön, und sie hat in Deutsch mit mir gesprochen. Sie hat gesagt, also in London spricht niemand Deutsch, und es war recht schwer für sie. Mein Deutsch ist sehr gefährlich, hat sie gesagt.
She was talking to him in German, and she said to him, nobody in London is talking German, and so my German is meanwhile a little bit dangerous.
Right.
Aber wir haben uns gut verstanden. Also ihr Deutsch ist ungefähr so wie mein Englisch.
He says her German is a little bit like his English, or my English.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I got in contact with Hershey, her son, and other members of their family.
Right.
Ruth and so.
It would be very interesting to know how you feel about this exhibition and what you see in the exhibition, Ruth's art.
So he knew that Ruth is working as an artist, and he tried to get some contacts with larger museums here in the region, or even in Leipzig, to give her the possibility to show her artworks about her family. But at the end, we decided to make the exhibition here in Sassanfahrt, in the place where her grandparents lived. And at last, it's for him, it's a great pleasure that now we have the exhibition here in Sassanfahrt, and then that we can show even a part of the history of our village and the history of the family Merell. Yeah, he hopes that many people may visit the exhibition because they should know that Nazis just didn't live only in Berlin or Munich or Cologne, but in every even small village. The National Socialism regime was also in Sassanfahrt. It was in every single smaller city and village, and in every village you had Nazi people. That's a fact. Also here in Sassanfahrt.
Do you still feel now that there are people who are very unsympathetic and they're very uncomfortable to see Jews coming back and walking around in Sassanfahrt?
It's indeed, it's something special that Jewish people come to Sassanfahrt, and even Jewish people who have roots here in Sassanfahrt. And so he thinks that some people in Sassanfahrt might be a little bit irritiert,
reticent.
Yes,
hold back
about that.
They're not used to it.
No, they're not used to it, because we had a Jewish community in Hirscheid, but this community was so small, even at the beginning of the 20th century, because many of the Jews from that region emigrated to the United States in the 19th century. And so the end of the Jewish community came even before 1933. And so since nearly 100 years, people in Hirscheid and Sassenfahrt are not used to meet Jews.
Right.
Only few people here know personally Jews. And so I think, or he thinks, that many people don't have any imaginations about Jewish culture, Jewish people, and never had a contact with Jewish people in their life. And so that could be, for some of them it could be interesting, and for some of them it could be a little bit irritating. Can you say that? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Also, I'd be very interested when you were doing your research. Do you know why the Merrill family had to live in Sassenfahrt and why they would be the only Jews who lived here? What was the historical background to that?
They were not allowed to stay in Bamberg because of their nationality. And so they had to move from Bamberg, and they were allowed to stay in Sassenfahrt. Hirscheid.
In Hirscheid haben sie keine Wohnung gekriegt, aber in Sassenfahrt haben sie eine Wohnung gekriegt. Und es war ja gut, es war nicht weit nach Hirscheid in die Synagoge oder auch in die, wir nennen es Judenschule. Das waren ein paar 100 Meter über die Brücke und deshalb haben sie Wohnung genommen in Sassenfahrt.
So they didn't find a place to stay in Hirscheid, but they found a house in Sassenfahrt where they could live. And it was not far away from the Jewish community in Hirscheid, only a few hundred meters across the river. And so they could go to the synagogue or to school and got in contact with the Jewish community of Hirscheid. But
I imagine it was also cheaper to live in Sassenfahrt.
Yes, I'm sure that it was cheaper. Because also you can say the social structure of Hirscheid and Sassenfahrt is very different, or was at that time very different. And so Sassenfahrt was a rather poor village, and Hirscheid was rather rich, and so of course it was cheaper to live in Sassenfahrt, and even cheaper than to live in Bamberg.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much indeed.
Gerne.
Thank you, Robert.
Sorry for my horrible...
No, it's great.
I have to apologize. So.
Not at all.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Denz. I'm a scholar for Jewish Studies and History and work at the University of Bamberg. I'm involved in the exhibition project we opened today with Ruth and Reinhard C. and with Annette. And last summer, Annette and I got in contact. Before that, Rainer and I were mailing and calling, talking on the phone, and he implemented this idea. That we all together have to work for it. That the artwork of Ruth can be presented here.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your work in the university?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you do?
Basically, I teach and I do a lot of administration in universities. It's even more administration than science, doing science. I'm special. Yeah, I'm very interested in the Franconian Jewish history, and we as the team of the Professorship of Judaic Studies, as we are called, we are doing Jewish studies, but the professor is called Judaic Studies, a German specialty in this field. And we try to bring to the mind of the local people that the Jewish history here in Franconia was rich, special, and it's worth dealing with it.
Right. So you focus more on the past and not so much the recent past of the Shoah.
I'm I'm an historian, and I'm a historian for Jewish people, for
Right.
Jewish history, and so I deal with Jewish people that are not living anymore, because I'm a historian, but
Sure.
I'm not focused on the Shoah.
Right.
I'm mostly interested in gender studies in the 19th, beginnings of the 20th.
Right. And do you mind sharing your own personal background? Where were you born? What sort of family?
I was born in southern Germany, but my family came from northern Germany, and after school I was interested in Israel, and so I went to a kibbutz.
Oh.
And after that I decided to study Jewish studies, because it's just I'm just interested in minorities.
Right. And then I'd also be interested, how do you feel people here in this area will react to Ruth's work on the Shoah?
I hope, or this is the intention for me to do the exhibition, that we together start thinking how memory can be in the future. Memory, the culture of memory on the Shoah, with different groups thinking together. I'm not so much. This is one of the basics of my work in general, to care about local historians that are not professional historians, and I am a professional historian, to talk with politicians, what they should do from my point of view. I mean, I'm not just a historian, I'm a citizen of Germany, and so
Sure.
it's my job to think about if I like the society I live in, or if it should be changed. And I hope that this very deep way of Ruth to think about her own family, it's just, if you see the art, if you watch it, you just see it's special and it's understandable. It's not too abstract.
Right.
And I hope, combined with the texts and the other sources that are presented, that local people and people from everywhere will start thinking together what should be in the future.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Rivka.
You're welcome.